Right. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Kevin Nyango. I'm the co-founder of Mtandao Varsity. The platform, mostly, it's about showing different ways of looking for employment. In particular, the use of soft skills. Most of young people are spending lots of money, doing degrees, certificates, diplomas, but they don't actually invest or take time to build what you call employability skills, which other people call soft skills. These are skills or characteristics like able to write, how to have critical thinking, leadership skills, team building, addressing or solving problems. So these are stuff that they don't teach in school anymore, but they're very, very important. However, today with my guest is Caleb, whom I know very well. From church days. He's an experienced and an expert in safeguarding. And he just came back from, I want to say, Iraq? No, is it Iraq?
Yes, Iraq.
Right, yeah. And well, listen, Caleb, well, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Thank you, Kevin.
And you're in Nairobi now, isn't it?
Yes, I am in Nairobi.
Right, and I know when we talked about Varsity, and you mentioned some of the experiences seeing young people, the way they live in Europe and in Asia, and they're victims of child trafficking. Is that the case?
Yeah, not really child trafficking, because child trafficking would be looking at it from the angle of children, but here we are dealing with trafficking in person because these are adults.
Right, and so you've worked well. You've got experience. I know you worked in Uganda for a while, and now you've been in Afghanistan. So you see lots of young people. So carry on.
Yes. Maybe, Kevin, before we get into talking about trafficking per se, I would like us to turn a little bit about the month that we are talking of. We are in the month of November. And the month of November, for those of us who may not be aware, is the month of the African youth. That is according to the African Union. We talk about the African Union because that is like the body that gives the oversight. And being that members of member countries are part of that. So we are assuming that all African countries subscribe to what the African Union says. So it will be interesting to just hear a little bit of what African Union is saying about the African Youth Month.
Well, listen, Oluto, even before you continue, I've got I look at African Union very different, and I don't like those guys. But since you've brought it up, please, you tell me what are they saying about youths in Africa?
It's like saying you don't like the house where you are coming from. You might not like a lot of the things that are happening in that house, but because that is your main door, that is your umbrella, it is sometimes important to look at it from where we are coming from. Because even when we talk about African youths being soft target for trafficking, we need to ask ourselves, where are we getting it wrong? And sometimes we get it wrong from the very people who set the policy directions. And that for me would be the African Union. That is why for me, I would say, let's start by just having a little look at that. First, they talk about the theme for the Africa Youth Month, because by the way, November, the whole of November, if you go to their internet, the whole of November according to the African Union, is the Africa Youth Month. The theme for this year is Youth Voices, Actions, and Engagements, Building a Better Africa. So what a good way to start our discussion, because when we talk about investing in the youth to build a better Africa, but then we are at the same time under the discussion of our very own youth being soft targets for trafficking, then you start wondering with where are we getting it wrong? And when you look at the numbers, we talk about, according to them in their website, it's like they are saying, and I may read, youth are at the heart of Africa's development agenda. That's a fact. We, the young people, are at the heart of any continent's development agenda because they form the majority. Over 70% of Africa's 1.2 billion inhabitants are under the age of 35. 75% under the age of 35 years. So it means only 25%. And apparently, when you look at the leadership in Africa, what's the average age of our presidents? So it means a good number of the leadership is from people who are above that age of young people. Then 435 million Africans are aged between 15 to 35 years. So it goes without saying that development outcomes of Africa, young people, have a significant and lasting effect on the continent's trajectory. But that is just according to what they are saying, because in reality, is that what we are seeing? The answer is everybody's guess. So then the African Union's Commission talks about recognizing the centrality of the young people in achieving what they call the aspiration of Agenda 2063. How many young people understand that Agenda 2063? Here's a situation where you have an agenda for people and they don't even understand that agenda. If you take it back to your house, you have an agenda for your children, but then they don't understand that agenda. So how then do you expect them to participate in it? So when you look at that, they end up saying that together with the African Union, Africa Youth Charter, we have the Africa Youth Charter and the Africa Plan for Action on Youth Empowerment. Then there is the Agenda 2063 and the action plan around it. They provide a framework which reflects the prioritization of youth development by the African Union Commission and by extension, AU member states. So AU member states are the African countries who we'll soon talk about when we look at trafficking. Then it ends up by saying, just to quickly sum it up, that in 2019, the AU chair, the AU Commission chair, launched the 1 million by 2021 initiative, which will create direct opportunities for 1 million young Africans in the areas of education, employment, entrepreneurship, and engagement, what they called the 4 E's. So that is where I would want us to start talking when we look at why are African youths a soft target for trafficking, yet we have very good things on paper. And then they end up summing it up by saying they had all these good things, but in 2020, and that's the excuse everybody is giving, COVID-19 pandemic hit the world. And that is why they could not be able to attain all these good things that they had for the African youth.
That's interesting, and I really appreciate you taking us back to, because as you say, we need to speak from a particular umbrella, and well, this is African in general. Now, I don't want to dwell much on African Union because, as I said, I've got very reservations. But allow me to ask you this: so you've worked in Uganda with young people, isn't it?
Yes.
And then you went to Afghanistan. I just want to go straight.
Iraq.
Oh, it's Iraq. Yeah, get my facts right. Iraq. And I remember you told me that you see lots of young people, very, very desperate, isn't it? And you mentioned also that most of these young people, they are traveling with money their parents borrowed from home.
Mm-hmm.
So where does it go wrong now from there?
All this starts from, basically, let's set the stage by us first agreeing and understanding what we mean by trafficking. Because you find that a lot of us will talk about trafficking, but then what do we understand by trafficking? When we talk about human trafficking, most of us have heard the term, but when you ask most people, they cannot precisely explain what it is, or even how they are contributing to making it thrive. Because those parents who are having to borrow money to pay somebody to bring their child to a Middle East country, that parent is already contributing to trafficking. Let's look at what is happening in the Mediterranean, where lots of young people are trying to cross from Libya into Italy, risking their lives, having paid so much money to somebody, money which, if you ask me, they could have possibly used it in a different way back home. So trafficking, if we can start from there, and we can look at it from the main international anti-trafficking law, which is known as the Palemo Protocol. And it says human trafficking is defined as the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threats or use of force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud or deception, or abuse of power or a position of vulnerability, or giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person for the purpose of exploitation. So in a nutshell, there are three elements that come out clear when we talk of human trafficking. There is the act, the way that somebody has been recruited. Then there is the means. How was this person approached? There is either coercion, there is either deception or fraud. And the purpose, why is this being done? There is a purpose. There's the motivation of mainly the trafficker, because the motivation of the person being trafficked is different. They think that the trafficker has the best interest of themselves at heart, which is not the cause, because the main thing here is there is a lot of profiteering from the whole process involved. And the purpose, mainly there are three. There is either labor exploitation, there is sexual exploitation, and for those of us who don't know, there's a lot of it going on, organ harvesting. Organ harvesting is a situation where I would say rich in quote unquote relatives take on a person from a poorer family in the name of coming to stay with them. And then they will later use them to take some of their body parts. They take you to hospital unknowingly, they operate on you, and they take some of your organs because probably one of their family members needed some organ transplant and they couldn't afford it. So it is happening so much in the Middle East where poor families, relatives are taking them and they're harvesting organs from them. Such are things that are soon going to happen in Africa, and maybe they are happening in some parts, we don't know, because a lot of that research has not been done fully. So those are some of the main elements of human trafficking that we need to be aware of.
And can I just ask a quick question on that subject? Well, you're talking about the definition of stuff. So you mentioned about families.
Mm-hmm.
So when a family gives their son X amount of money to go to Europe, what's the intention there? Is it just for work, they can send money home, or is for also a better lifestyle?
You know, when we talk about the means and we look at the deception, is the way the coming into another third country is made to look like. You have this person who has just finished their their education. Sometimes they have even gone to tertiary level where they have gone to college, and they look at themselves back home that they don't have a job because a lot of our young people are in the illusion that they have to be employed for them to call that a job. They don't, we have not built in our young people the mindset that they can be able to create jobs. And it might not be that we've not built, we've already killed the models that would have been used previously to help them to build jobs for themselves. And I will come to that later. So you find that you as a parent, you are being sold an idea that if you pay X amount of money, for some people, they will be told, if you pay me $2,000, then your son or your daughter will come into this country and I will do everything, including getting for them a passport if they don't have. I will get for them, I will organize for them transport, the flight ticket. And then when they get into this country, I will organize for them to get a job. And in that job, they will be given accommodation. So that is the picture that is being shared with you, who is probably in some remote parts in Africa. So
and so what now? So sorry, Caleb. Just so who am I to, at that particular point? I'm talking to one of the agents of these traffickers, or who exactly now am I talking to?
It depends with how you get started. Sometimes our very own young people will get wind of this kind of an opportunity. At that time, we call it an opportunity because it looks too good. So there is somebody who is out there and trying to lure young people into these schemes. And this person will come and give you this picture. So it is this picture that you come with it to your parent and you give them like a picture of a plan. You give your parent a plan, and sometimes your parent has been frustrated with you having finished college. So when they are told that if you give us $2,000, in Kenyan rate, that would be around slightly more than 200,000, right? So if you give us 200,000 and pay this person will get your son a job. This person will get your daughter a job. At that point, the discussion is not what type of a job, because they sell it in such a way that they are telling you, we'll get your son a job and they will be able to repay this money in less than a year, you know? So that is the first point where they get people into debt bondage. In trafficking, we have something we call debt bondage, where now somebody will get into some debt in the name of getting their child to the other side so that immediately they can repay that money. So sometimes parents,
this can be a family member or a friend, could be someone that the family knows very well.
In most cases, when you look at even the profile of exploiters, abusers, let's talk about even con people. These are people who are known to you. Kevin, somebody who is known to you will come because they know your vulnerability, you know? So they start from your vulnerability. They know, for instance, that Kevin has a son who has been looking for a job for X number of years. So when I go to sell to Kevin's son, and I know Kevin has the capability of getting this money, so I push your son to push you, okay? And sometimes out of that frustration, you are like, you want to give it a try. So you give in to your son's demand, and you sometimes, we've had people who've sold land, family land, because the way it is set, it's like within 1 year, look at it this way. If somebody tells you that you put in 200,000, because that time is in dollars, so sometimes your parents are even confused if they are not learned, because you are telling them it's 2,000, all right?
Wow.
So they don't go into the calculations of what is 2,000. So they will get you this money, you pay, and then you have been told that within 1 year, you will have repaid that money, right? And then in the next year of your 2-year contract, you will now be reaping the profits of your stay. Who cannot take that deal?
And so fast forward. So the fast forward. So so someone came to me, tells me there's this opportunity. Just before we're still in, let me take a country, Kenya. So we're still in Kenya. So someone told me, right, this is the deal here. Is there a way, Khaled, that families actually can know whether this is truth? I mean, is there a mechanism the government can help people to understand that when someone comes to me and tells me that there is this opportunity in Iraq and it's $3,000, it sounds good. Should we have government or anyone that we can verify with this kind of information?
Yes, there are. And the mechanisms that sometimes people don't use is they don't. I remember when you started, you talked about some of the soft skills that we need to have. Critical thinking. You don't ask yourself, or you don't interrogate further to look at how true is this. Sometimes these very people have their own network of people they can use. They have people who they have taken back into those countries, and they will give you an example. Look at the family of so and so. Their daughter went to this country, and look at how they have thrived. Fine, there are those families who can have those so-called success stories. Their child went, they got a good family, and they were able to send some money back. But it is not a story for most people. What are we seeing? What are we seeing in the media? We see a lot of deaths sometimes. We see a lot of families crying in anguish when their child went to the Middle East, things didn't go well. They have to come back with nothing. So even in the US, we've had people who've gone and been deported. We have people in Europe who've been deported back. But then what are some of the stories we hang on to? The stories we hang on to are these stories of, but so and so made it. So it was maybe just sheer bad luck. So those are some of the things. And like I said, sometimes these people thrive on people's vulnerability. Because when you are so vulnerable, you want to look at that hope, because that would be the only light shining. And you are like, okay, get me these $2,000. And within 1 year, you've already repaid the 2,000. In the next year, what are you doing? You are just bringing in the profits. So who wouldn't want to have that story? It's like a fairy tale.
Do we have, I know we need to talk about the particular, how environment is like in this kind of countries, but in your experience, do we have people that come back home, after not having nasty experiences? Let's say, for example, people usually going to Italy via Libya. Do you think that people like, I've gone there, I've gone to Libya, you know what, this is not worth it, let me go back home. Do we have this kind of people, and is there a platform they can share this kind of stories to kind of deter people from making these plans?
Okay, let me talk about the people we have helped to come back,
right,
who we have repatriated.
From where? This is from where?
This is from Iraq.
Uh-huh.
Last year in October, there were 2 ladies from Nakuru who we supported. One was from Nakuru and another one was from Mombasa. So we supported them to come back home because they found themselves in a very sticky situation. And this is what happens. Let me give you a picture of what happens in, say, Iraq. In Iraq, when somebody comes in, you can get into the country in 2 ways. One is through a visitor's visa. And then another one is through an employment visa. So when you get in, the visitor's visa goes for 30 days, all right? And then the employment visa is for 15 days. This 15 days is time enough to allow you to apply for and wait for your application for the residency to come out.
Mm-hmm.
In Iraq, they have a residency for 1 year, which is renewable. Prior to getting the residency, you have to do a medical. They have a medical which is done. It is only when you pass the medical that you get the residency card.
So the medical test, you mean?
Yes, you have to go through a medical test. You pay some money, your agent will pay some money, or the company that is going to employ you will pay some money and will process for you the residency card. So if they gave you a 1-year contract, they will give you the residency for 1 year. All right. So once you get the residency, this then allows you to stay and work in Iraq. If you don't have the residency, because probably you came in through a visitor's visa, then depending with how shrewd you are, the person who invited you is, they can turn that visitor's visa into a work visa. It is a process, but there are some people who manage to do that. And this person would now have their residency card. But there are some who don't do that. So they bring you in. They don't get into these costs of having to process for you the visa.
So these are smugglers now, right?
These are now the traffickers, because smuggling is a whole different thing. These are now the traffickers. They will bring you in under the deception of, we will get you all these documents. Okay.
What's the difference? Sorry, Kale. What's the difference between a smuggler and a trafficker? Or are those?
Smuggling is about transporting somebody to a destination illegally or at a fee. That's nothing to do with trafficking. Smuggling is like you want to move from point A to B, and there are restrictions to you moving because you don't have the necessary documentation. So I would get you into the vehicle, and we've seen a lot of this happening. Sometimes, if you look at the situation in Kenya, we have people coming from Somalia, from Ethiopia, who are bound, are going to South Africa. So those people are smuggled through the way. They are put into a container, and they are transported. So that is smuggling.
And
trafficking is what I had explained earlier, is like moving this person for a purpose of exploitation.
Right.
All right. But this other one would just be like, you know, the way you would have somebody, you are smuggling somebody, you would just get a driver, tell them, hey, can you move for me this person from point A to B? And you give this driver some money. So it is up to the driver and like the conductor to know how they are going to make their passage through the traffic.
So this is illegal now, illegal stuff. So smuggling is illegal, of course.
Yeah, it's also illegal. Yeah. So,
so on this particular, so just so all our viewers to be very clear. So we are talking about trafficking now, and you're explaining to me some of the people that you have rescued. So please carry on.
Yeah. So these individuals came back, and they were received by one of them who went to the coastal town, was received by an agency which it's a human right based agency. So ideally, those are the voices which should amplify some of these issues that are working on. The extent to which they do it is maybe a discussion for another day. But part of also what the government needs to be doing is to try and talk about some of these issues, because you will hear a lot of young people complaining in the Middle East. You remember we've had cases of people dying. We've had cases of people being mistreated in the Middle East. But to what extent do we hear the government bringing its voice quite hard? Then we have government agencies. In Kenya, we have the various policies. We have the Counter Trafficking in Persons Act of 2010. And then we have the Anti-Human Trafficking and Child Protection Unit under I think it's under the DCI. So all these are I would call are instruments which we can use to do a lot of preventive work, because when you look at trafficking,
these are the instruments at the country now, or else
at the country level. At the country level, Yeah, and when you look at the trafficking issues, we talk about the 3 Ps. We talk about prevention, we talk about prosecution, and we talk about protection of the victims. And across the world, you will find that prosecution of traffickers is very minimal. This you can find from the US. The US each year produces the Trafficking in Persons report. Currently, it is on its 20th edition because this started being produced since 2001. This was after the US government passed the Trafficking Victim Protection Act in 2000. And now each year they produce a report. It is like a report which lists the countries by the way they are doing to prevent trafficking. And they have listed countries. They have listed countries in different tier levels. So there is countries in tier 1 level. These are countries which are doing quite a lot of substantive work to prevent trafficking. Then there is tier 2 level, and this is where Kenya and a good number of African countries are, where there is some work being done, but we are not meeting the minimum standards for elimination of trafficking. But it is said we are making some significant effort towards those directions. So Kenya is still a tier 2 country, which means we are not meeting the minimum standards for elimination of trafficking, but we are making significant effort. Significant effort, according to the report, means we are raising awareness. We are reaffirming our commitment to end trafficking. But then,
are you saying Kenya is actually, sorry, Caleb, are you saying that Kenya is actually raising awareness in terms of human trafficking?
Yeah, according to the report, if you take time and read the 20th edition of the Trafficking in Persons report, that is what we have.
Caleb, when you started this discussion, you mentioned that this people that are being targeted are the vulnerable people, poor people.
Yes, yes.
Where do they find these policies from? Listen, I've never heard of that until today. Excuse ignorance. So perhaps there has to be lots of outreach programs to let us know that we are protected.
That is why I would say that there is still too much work that needs to be done around the raising of awareness, because yes, the funding for some of this work is also very minimal. You find that the leadership in even doing all this is very minimal. When you realize that as a country, you have to rely on civil society to raise awareness on an issue that is affecting a bulk of your citizenship, then you ask yourself, where are our priorities? And this is also what is happening across most African states, because you find that ask any country, look at the budgets. Would you see any monies that has been put in efforts to raise this awareness? We have some money that has been put, and like, for instance, when you read the report, you will find that in May 2019, the government started the National Employment Authority. This was to regulate labor migration. Mark that word, to regulate labor migration. So basically, this authority is coming in there to try and ensure that people are just not moving. Because as a country, you want to regulate this so that you can guard against things like brain drain. Yes. When you are having your people moving, when you are having your able-bodied people going out, you need to be able to know what kind of jobs are they going to do. Let's be honest, a lot of the young people who are coming to the Middle East, what jobs are they coming to do? They're coming to do domestic work. Now, what's the benefit of taking somebody through so many years of education, then they come outside here and they are only doing domestic work? You have your
properly.
You have your Form 4 leavers, you have your college graduates, and they are coming here and they are doing domestic work. Is that strategic? But why do they end up doing that? They end up doing that because where are those opportunities back home? So that would be the other side of the discussion, because somebody would be saying that at least even if I come out there, I do domestic work, I am able to earn my $250. And that is not money anybody back home would give me if I stayed back home.
Caleb, I'm going to be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's give an example. I'm sure each and every of us, I want to say Kenya because, well, that's where we are from and you're very familiar with. So each and every Kenyan must know somebody that is outside Kenya, and I mean, either Middle East, Asia, Europe, stuck, isn't it?
That would be, that would be a good premise to start with.
Right, but people don't talk about it. So I suppose what I'm trying to ask you is, we've got people that come back home. Like I know of a very good friend, moved to Dubai for 2 years, came back home. He told me it didn't work out, but he didn't tell me the exact details, what he meant, but it didn't work out. Now, I want you to be very specific here, because you've been in those countries, you've seen what's happening there. Please share with me one experience. At what point, or how would these young people get rescued? For example, is it them that decide to go to the to go to organizations like Save the Children UK, or how do they get there? How do they get to these agencies that bring them back home?
Okay, let's first do a quick forward back into our country. I talked about the National Employment Authority, right? Whose role was to regulate labor migration. This authority is the one which registers, right? Which registers employment agencies, all right? And it is important to note that between 2019, when it was registered, and now as we speak, in 2019, we had 69 organizations which were engaged in labor. All right.
So this NGOs. So these are NGOs now, right?
No, these are just private entities.
Right.
Who are engaged with. They are like the agencies which negotiate with the organizations or the people who will take in the young people into the Middle East countries.
So these are certified agencies?
Yes, these are registered, certified by the National Employment Authority. So then this number moves from 69 to 284. So what does that tell you? It tells you that it is a good business.
Yes.
Let's just put it bluntly. It's a good business because you cannot register something that is not going to make you something.
Yes, make you money.
Yeah. So if this number increased from 69 to 284, what does it mean? It means there is demand. And demand means that there are people in the Middle East who need these young people, all right? So there has to be somebody out here in the country to facilitate this process, all right?
So these are the legal way now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is legit. This is legit because they will they have all the certification from the government through the National Employment Authority. So they will get these young people and they will get them there. Okay, the problem is whenever something happens to these young people, all right, they are not there to support. These young people,
at what point are we talking about now here? We're talking about at
the point when they come. Let's talk about Iraq. This person was brought legally and handed over to a company. In Iraq, where I used to work, there are organizations, there are agencies which will get you manpower. All right.
Yes.
So let's put this into perspective. Like in the Kenyan setup, if you want a house help, all right, you would need to go to an agency, all right?
Yes.
You will pay some money to that agency and they will give you a house girl, all right? And because this is local, there is no paperwork you need to do. Somebody will come from Kisumu, will come to Nairobi, and will stay in Nairobi. There is no paperwork that needs to be done, all right? Now take this situation. This somebody is moving from Nairobi, Kenya, and coming into Iraq. Okay. Now, like I had said earlier, in Iraq, for them to stay and work, they need some form of paperwork to get their residency.
Yes.
Now, these people will promise that we will do the residency for this person, we will give them accommodation, we will pay them this much. And they have a contract. I once saw a shady contract which was done by one of these individuals. They held a contract which is saying how much they are going to be paid and what is going to be done for them, all right? So that is part of what is agreed before they leave Kenya, all right?
Yes.
Now, when they come into the other side, all right, and part of what was in that contract is not honored, all right? Now, where do they have to go? Very little places to go. Because number one, in Iraq, we don't have a Kenyan embassy.
Right,
Iraq, the Kenyan embassy that oversees Iraq is in Saudi. Okay? So ideally, when you get into Iraq, just like you, when you get into UK, you are supposed to say, register yourself with the embassy there. And
I am registered.
Apparently most Kenyans, I realized, don't do this. Because when I was talking to some people about registering, they were like, why? Why should I register? Because we don't see any benefit from it. So these people are supposed to be overseen from Saudi. Where does all this break? Because my assumption was at the beginning that because these people were taken in through a government regulated process, then let's say the government should have written to the Saudi embassy that, hey, we have today authorized X number of young people, and this is their names, and they are bound to go to Iraq, all right? So that this person already has the names of these people. But that is not the case, right? That is not the case. Remember, if you want to understand this, remember during the COVID-19 situation where a lot of our young people in Saudi were locked in and they wanted to come back home. And when they stormed the embassy, first of all, it was locked. There was nobody to assist them. Then secondly, somebody tells them that you guys were not registered when you came in, so we don't even know that you've been here. That's the reality. It's like you now going to a situation happens in the UK and you rush to the embassy and they say, hey, Kevin, we don't even know you've been here. And you tell them, but I've been here for the last X number of years. And they are like, hey, when did you come in? And they start asking you back those stories. So that's the kind of scenario. So if this person gets into a situation where they are being exploited, they don't have anybody to run to. They end up running to NGOs who try to assist them, all right? Sometimes it becomes very difficult because apparently when you look at statistics, most countries have signed the anti-trafficking laws. They have the anti-trafficking laws in place. And the biggest challenge sometimes is the practical aspects of the law. Because you find that when you are in that kind of a situation and you came in, you don't have any of your papers. Because what happens is when this person is brought into the company and the company takes them to a house where they are going to work, most of these houses will take their documents. So they'll take their passport, all right?
So these are domestic workers now?
Yeah. This is
Right.
the reality of domestic work.
Right.
So the house where you are taken in, the family will take your passport. So ideally, you don't have a passport. Sometimes we hear this and we say, how barbaric is that? But come back home. We have employers who will go and take a house help, and apparently they will take their IDs, right? It's happening in Kenya.
That is illegal, right?
It is illegal because rightfully you have no right to hold anybody's papers. But then you see, they do this because they are also trying to minimize their costs. They paid something at the agency, right? They had to pay something to be given this lady to come and work in their houses. So they take their passports because that is like their collateral. That is like what I can hold so that you don't run away. But
Right.
then if this household starts abusing you, what happens? You try to look for help. You probably will run to the nearest police station. The police station will ask you to go back to the agency which brought you here. And that apparently is the company which received money to take you to this house. Okay. In most cases, they are not happy with that kind of arrangement because when you run away and come back to them, they know that the household is going to come back to ask for their money so that they can be given a replacement. All right. So that begins the cycle of a lot of stresses around most of these people. If you are lucky, you can get a hearing and a favorable hearing in the courts where your case can be adjudged to be a trafficking case. If you are unlucky, you can end up being accused for being in this country illegally.
All right. So they use that as a threat now because you don't
Yeah,
have
so
paper.
they use that as a threat because you don't have papers. And when you don't have papers, sometimes you count your losses. You look at your losses, you cut your losses, and you tell yourself, hey, if I do this, I will get into even more trouble. Because if you leave that place without your passport, even going out becomes another big challenge.
Wow. Caleb, again, listen, I don't take much of your time. Just allow me to go back again. So you said there are certified agencies that will have legit work or legit opportunities outside Kenya, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. And also these agencies, they charge. So for example, if do they have like particular skills they're looking for? Are each and every agency is registered in a particular field, or it doesn't matter?
No, they do. They are open, especially what I've seen in most of those ones that take labor to the Middle East. There are times when you will hear them talking of looking for teachers. All right. There are some who will talk of looking for, let's say, kindergarten teachers. There are some who will be looking for domestic workers. They will be
Right. Or hospitality industry, cooks, chefs.
or hospitality industries. Sometimes they will be looking for bouncers, like in Dubai. A lot of the bouncers in most clubs you'll find that they are mostly Kenyans, apparently.
Kenyans. And at
Yeah,
this
yeah.
particular juncture, Caleb, these are legal people.
Yeah, these are legal. And
Right. So it's just very clear for everyone to understand that actually you can get to Dubai or you can get to Middle East, Asia, or Europe legally to come and work. There are agencies that are doing that, isn't it?
quite a lot of them will
Right.
do that. But then what is not talked about
Mm-hmm.
is, yes, they will go out legally. All right? They'll go out the legal way, nothing under the waters.
Mm-hmm.
But then when they get into this other side,
Right,
and
right, right,
part of the agreements are not honored. This person
right.
said they are going, like, if you come to a country which they need you to have a residency, they said they are going to do for you the residency papers to allow you legal stay. If they don't do this, then you find yourself in a situation where you got out legally, but then you find yourself in an illegality.
Right. So this is not young people's fault now because I went to, so you're saying, for example, I come from let's say Machakos, I'm a foreign for leave, I'm looking for employment. I go to an agency, they tell me, you know what, oh, there's this opportunity to buy, they're looking for bouncers, okay? Pay me 2,000, pay me 50,000 shillings and I will take you there. That's legal. Now, where is the help then? If I'm going there legal, what should young people do to make sure that when things go sour, they can always come back home? Do they have the voice of saying no to their, no, they cannot give up their passport?
Now that is where the challenge is, because we need to be talking about the safeguards. What are the safeguards?
Yes.
Because the moment you leave the country, a lot of the young people who I have interacted with, it's like they have sort of, their rights have been taken away. All right? Their rights have literally been taken away, because you land into this other side, the first thing that is taken is your passport. So already when somebody has taken your passport, what is your bargaining chip? You already become even much more vulnerable. So you remain at the mercy of these individuals. And that is where that is how the trafficking syndicate kind of works. It is like you are deceived that this is how it's going to work, because trust you me, if you are to talk to even young people who've come to the Middle East, they will tell you that by the time they went to the agencies, they were told, you will work for this much, you will have your 1 day off or 2 days off. All that is legal. What is legal in managing manpower? They will tell you all that. They will tell you you will have freedom to come back to your country after a certain time. But trust you me, when it comes back to coming back to your country, ask anyone, do they get that leeway? They don't. So that is why you find that by the time you move, you find yourself trapped. And that is the beginning of a lot of the challenges.
Okay, now, and again, I'm going to ask you now. So because we have determined that there are legal ways of going to these countries, but so where do they get help then? If I've gone there, they've taken my passport, the deal has gone sour, where will people get help?
Like I said, if I give you the example of what happened in Iraq, then most of these people would call on us. Yes, they have the government hotlines, but sometimes they don't have access to them. So sometimes they would call on us. As NGOs, we had programs for creating awareness on what to do when you are in a sticky situation, and they would sometimes call on us. And once they call on us, then we would be able to find some solutions for them. The organization I was working with used to have a shelter for victims of trafficking. And when they get into that shelter, we would provide some aftercare services. That would be.
Is it okay? Is it okay to ask you what organization? You don't have to answer it, but will you mention some of these NGOs that you can get help from?
Okay, because part of this discussion was really not to talk about these organizations per se,
No.
and I don't know whether they would be okay for me to bring them up in this discussion, but a lot of those organizations are out there in the web. So if anybody wants to look for anti-trafficking, combating human trafficking organizations, they would just need to go through the website and they would see some of these organizations.
So,
yeah.
So I truly understand, and I know that you're not speaking for anyone, you speak for yourself. Now, okay, you don't have to mention who you work for, but can you mention others then that are there that we can have a look at?
Yeah, if you go to the website, you will find an organization.
Which website that?
That's what I'm saying. Just go do a Google search for, like, say, in Iraq. For me, I would want to focus in Iraq because that is where I worked in. Because I wouldn't be able to say around organizations in the Middle East because I've only worked particularly in Iraq. And like one organization which is known across the world that supports victims of trafficking is IOM.
Right. Okay.
So IOM is in each International Office of Migration.
Right. Yes.
It is in each and every country, both in Africa, both in the Middle East. So anybody who comes across IOM would be linked up with local organizations who are doing counter trafficking work.
That's
So
very helpful. Thank you very much.
IOM would be the starting point, and I know even the organization I was working for, we had several referrals from IOM, and any UN agency would be able to link anybody up with some of these organizations.
That's very helpful. And let's go to the last segment now. But just again to reiterate what you said, if you know anyone that is stuck in either Middle East, Europe, or Asia, these are going sour, please go to IOM, look at their website, and reach out. Okay, do not let your friend or family be desperate or be used as slaves. Please go to IOM, have a look, and seek help. Now, Caleb, so the last segment of this. So, okay, so we know that people will always go to Europe or Middle East for work. We know that will happen. But what do we do to stop that?
I wouldn't say that I would be an expert in what we should do to try and stop this trend, but I would look at it like, ask ourselves, why are these people moving from their countries? Number one is the issue of young people are disillusioned with opportunities in their country. Number one. So let's look back at what is happening. Why are our young people not employable? And if they are not employable because there are no opportunity, how can we make them be able to do something for themselves? Like for me, I had these issues. Previously, we had polytechnics, right?
Yes.
And in polytechnics, we had young people coming with some hands-on skills, masons, electricians, plumbers, you name it. Soon, without knowing, we had these universities craze, and all the polytechnics were turned into universities. What kind of people are they churning out? They're churning graduates, and for me, they are graduates who cannot really move anywhere, right? So we have so many graduates who are not able to do anything. And that is why you find that, look around, you'll find that a lot of young people, even those so-called graduates, are engaging in a field which they never studied for. And what is that telling you? That there is some problem in the way we are developing our young people. So we have in places like, if I look back at some of the things we read in situations like Europe, in situations like the US, we have this crop of young people who never go to tertiary colleges because at some point it is noticed that they are not good in academics. But then how are they cushioned? They are taken into polytechnics. They get skills. They are the plumbers, they are the masons, they are the electricians, you name it. But then how are we channeling our young people? Are we giving them some skills which they can use even for their own employment? Because look at it, we have a lot of real estate coming up. So it means if these houses are going to have people, they are going to use water, the sewage system is going to block, there is somebody who is going to be needed to unblock it, right?
Yes.
How have we made those jobs look good for young people?
Yeah.
Now,
in fact, I looked down upon actually.
Yeah. Then we have the situation of even building our infrastructure, building our roads. Remember, sometimes back, we used to have a very vibrant NYS where we would have young people who are going to be trained. And I remember those are the days I even learned what a plant operator is, because sometimes when you hear a word plant operator, you are like, is this person operating plants or what? But then those are where we had the plant operators. Now, look at what is happening now. Roads are being built, right? We are getting staff and manpower from where? China. Do we need to do that? Then we have the counties. The counties, are they harnessing the potential that is with the young people? So these are the things that are making the young people get out of this country to look for something, even if it is not going to be the real thing, but it is something which is going to engage them, right? And then slowly we end up turning our young people to people who engage in some very practices that we don't like to talk about later, because they go out, when things don't work out, they have the shame of coming back empty-handed. We have our young ladies getting into prostitution, getting into sex slavery, and all those kind of things that we wouldn't want our young people to be engaged in. But the push factors are leading them into some of these practices, which unfortunately are not the best of things to talk about. We've lost a lot of young people in the Middle East who've engaged in some not so good practices, because they ended up there, they became vulnerable. They don't want to come back empty-handed, because sometimes they got into debt bondage. Their parents sold the only piece of land that they had. So they are imagining coming back and telling their parents it didn't work, right?
Wow. Wow, it sounds really sad. And actually, when you just hitting me home now, that by the end of the day, the buck stops with the government. Then, Caleb, you know, they've got, for example, you mentioned those what I want to say, the life skills. So, for example, you know, maybe not life skills, but I'm looking for arts like masons or plumbers, painters, mechanics.
The artisans
Artisans,
skills.
exactly. That's what I'm
Yes.
looking for. These kind of opportunities, they're not really promoted, and people look at them as failures.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say, you know, if you're a plumber, you know, you didn't do very well in school. Perhaps but these are the things that actually, you know, as you say, will protect people from going to from leaving the country. But having said that, Oluto, just now this is the last point with the last part of this discussion. And I think it's very important just to repeat in terms of agencies. You know, check with, you know, you have certified agencies that is taking you to Middle East. You know, have a contact. When you go to those countries, you've got to register really. You know, when things go sour, you know where to start. And also, people should know the NGOs, or for example, IOM, that can actually help people not to live as slaves. You know, because I mean, I don't know. You say it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's going to be a challenge to stop you from moving to Middle East. But we've got to do something about it, though.
Yeah, I think apart from the government also, I think sometimes we also end up getting into this hole of always blaming the government. But we also have a responsibility to ourselves. We also have a responsibility to ourselves, because you don't get into a situation and then start blaming immediately. You also need to ask yourself, how are you getting there? Because let's look at the maths. You use 300,000, all right, to go for a job, which you don't even know. Now, tell me, if you were to work out to invest this 300,000, take this young person to a vocational skills training. They would come out with a vocation, all right, with an artisan skill. It will not even take 150, right? So that would mean it would give this person a skill, right? And it would even give them a capital. 300 would give them a skill and a capital. But how many of our young people are ready to wait? We are ready for the quick fix. So instead of saying, let me take 6 months to develop a skill, all right? Then after that, I be able to use another part of that money to invest. So we are not having as much engagement as possible. We are just looking for a quick fix. And that is why you find in the Mediterranean, look at those young people who are trying to cross from Libya to Italy. What's the lure? The lure is they are told Italy, Europe, there are much more opportunity. Opportunities which, by the way, they don't know. All right? So sometimes they have paid so much, But then how long does it take them to repay, even if they get a job? Let me give you a picture. Let's say this person gets a good, it goes well according to how it's said. They
Yes.
travel, they come to Iraq. In Iraq, they go through an agency. The agency works on their residency papers
Yes.
and they go to a family. The family, when you are doing domestic work in Iraq, would pay you between $250 and $300.
Wow.
Okay. Now let's take it that you do this for 2 years. How much is that? In 1 year, if you remove a little bit of your expenses, obviously, let's say you save around 150. So in a year, you would be making, in 10 months, that is 1,500, then add 300. So you'll be making 1,800, all right? Give or take, everything is okay, all right? There is no exploitation. There is nothing wrong. The family that you are going to is okay, because that happens. Even look at the Kenyan situation. A young lady comes from Kisumu, for instance, comes to work as a house help. There are some who are exploited. There are others who are possibly get a good family. Let's say the good family pays them 10,000. They are able to support their siblings back in the village, right? So that is the kind of picture that somebody is looking at. But that picture is not with so many young people.
Yes.
A lot of the young people never get to see that rosy picture. Some I have seen end up being jailed for the better part of the years that they are in Iraq, because they tried to run away after a few months. They didn't have their papers. They were jailed. They stay in prison for all that time. The shame makes them not be able to communicate back to their families that, hey, it didn't work out. We've
Wow.
had cases where sometimes families have had to bail their own people. When it doesn't work out, sometimes the companies will tell you, hey, you have to pay us because we got into a contract, you never fulfilled part of the contract, so you have to pay us like 100, and then you have to do your ticket. So sometimes you find that again, you have to rely back on your family to bail you out. So it's all a situation where we need to ask ourselves, 300 versus building these young person skills. And we need to also start re-engaging with our youths so that they start understanding the importance of going through processes and not looking for quick fix, because it's the quick fix that leads our young people into some of these challenging situations that they are in.
Wow, well said and well put. And these are things now thinking about it. They're quite. It's not rocket science really. For example, you're saying that these traffickers may need like not traffickers, but the real agencies may like 300K or whatever to take them to the destination. They can use that money actually to build themselves, and even not just with that fee, Caleb. I even think of the flight ticket. The flight ticket, is 50, 60K. So rather than using that, to go somewhere you don't know, you can use that, to do something for yourself here. However, Caleb, the reality is many people are desperate, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as you say, they feel like they want that quick fit, but the reality is there are no jobs. So again, I'm going to ask you, what, as you've seen these people, you've experienced, not experienced, but you've seen, the sufferings that the victims are going through. What will you tell young people right now? Even though things are hard, things are tough, we're living in a pandemic now, really. Opportunities are becoming more scarce, actually. But what do you tell us? What do you tell young people that are thinking of, what, the only way I can make it is to go to Libya or go to Italy?
Like I've said, sometimes it's a question of asking yourself, what do you have, right? This is a young person who is able-bodied, right? They have a lot of opportunities. Look around. What are some of the things that are not being done. Some of these jobs that they shy away from, right? We have young people here who've gotten into some vocational skills training and they have made something for themselves. Rather than sometimes look at being pushed by your peers that you have to go for this uh, degree course. Sometimes we have young people who go for degree courses that leads them nowhere. So that is the point where we need to start challenging ourselves. Young people, what discussions are we having about our career paths? You know, sometimes we just go to school, we make the grades, and we have to go to. That is why I was saying, look around. You will find that a lot of the young people have gone through the 4 years of university, but then they come out and they are doing different engagements than they went even to learn. I know of a young person who basically told their father that, look, I don't want to go to the university. And the father was so mad because the father was like, you have to go to the university. The child was adamant and asked, what about it? And the child told him, look, I would want to go to do a hairdressing course. And the father felt insulted. But the father insisted. This young man went for the 4 years because the father was paying, did the 4 years. On the side, this young guy was going through a hairdressing course. The father didn't know. The guy was going through a hairdressing course to do these dreadlocks because apparently at that point, dreadlocks were the rave, and the young guys who were doing the locks were in high demand. So this young guy, after graduation, put aside the certificate and started their own salon business. So now look at it. If this young person was with a good parent who was able to listen to them, 4 years of a degree course which you won't use anywhere, and investing in that idea that this young person had, one, the parent would have saved quite a lot. And the young man, apparently the young man ended up becoming the family savior at one point when the father was sick. Because the business he was engaged in, the hairdressing business he was doing, was bringing in so much that he was able to put up his own salon. He was able to pay the rent for it, and he was able to even employ other young people. So it's all about we also listening to sometimes the voices of young people, right? Listening to the voices of these young people, listening to some of their ideas. Sometimes as parents, we think we know. And sometimes as parents, we are also pushing our children because the neighbors' children are going to university, you have to go to the university.
Yes.
Sometimes you are trying to mend your failures through your children. We have even parents who choose careers for their children because this parent failed miserably to get into that career, which they so much wanted. And then they are seeing their child moving towards that direction and they start pushing this child. So it's a question of us parents also, we have a role in some of the frustrations we are bringing to our young people. So let's not push our children to get into some tertiary education levels that they don't necessarily need. Let's not do it for us. Yes. Let's also listen to the voice of that young person. Just like we started by saying the AU. You remember the theme? I'll take you back to the AU, even if you don't like them, but they are there. Yes. They are talking about the theme is youth voices, actions, and engagements. How are we engaging our young people? We should not quickly go to the government. It starts from home. As the parent, how are you engaging with your young people in career choices, in career discussions? Sometimes a young person comes with a career choice, which is not the parent's idea. But then look at what is doing to them. It is, look at the beauty industry. For the longest time, if you told your parent as a young man that you are going into the beauty industry, how would they look at you? They would be
Yes,
like, this is a lost man. If you
that's interesting. And I
if
don't want to
you
what
say it even in our local language, Luo, it sounds so bad. Like they would be like, look at this guy, you know. So those are the things we are saying, right?
No, Caleb, I listen. We can stay here and talk about this issue because they're not as simple as they sound. You know, they are people are losing lives. You know, they are causing depression among families. So it is a tough one. But a disclaimer: we've got also to agree. Like, listen, I've had a very successful career in the UK. You know, so it's it is doable. You know, for well yourself, you had a very good career as well. You know, you travel all over really. So it is doable, but there has to be the right channel to follow. We've got to trust the process. But the main important thing also is we've got to listen, as you say. You know, perhaps universities also need to have programs that add value.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know universities are, as you say, most of polytechnics were turned into universities. It's becoming a business. Yes, it is a business, but also we should think of what kind of courses do we have in these universities that can add value to us? And something else, again, you mentioned, Khaled, which I really like, is some of these vocational skills. People
Mm-hmm.
are leaving. Well, myself, my parents took me to school. My dad never went to university. My father was an artisan.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got 4 brothers, 1 sister. Most of us have gone to university. So these kind of courses that young people choose, they can actually change lives. Look at the comedy industry now. You know, they're doing okay. And these are things that maybe during my time, 10, 15 years ago, you won't tell your parents you want to be a comedian, but they're doing okay. Caleb, your last word, take us home.
I think in when all is said and done, I think we also need to be part of the solution. Let's not look at the solution always coming from the government, because sometimes when you look at it, government priorities sometimes are developed by people who don't think about the masses. And in that masses, that is where we lose a lot of young people. So what I would say is, as parents, we need to come into the lives of our children. We need to look at the trends. We need to think before we throw our young people into some areas, because we are the only hope sometimes they have. When the government has failed them, we remain the only hope. So I wouldn't be so much for the idea of always pushing the back to the government. Sometimes I would say, let's push it back to ourselves, and then let's also push it to our young people. And that is where the whole issue of soft skills comes in, because our young people need also to engage what you said earlier, critical thinking. Let's give them that opportunity to engage, because sometimes our young people find themselves that they are the only literate people in a family of illiterate people. So sometimes we agree some of our parents are not as enlightened as we are, right? And then they rely on sometimes us to give them direction. We assume that parents should be the ones to guide their children. Yes, they have certain wisdom that they have, which we cannot take away, because not all wisdom comes from education. And sometimes from what you see out here, the more educated people are, the less wiser they are. They make some actions which you are like, how dash they are. So sometimes it's all about also supporting these young people, engaging in such like forums where people can talk about some of the issues, because some of these things are what we lack. We lack forums where young people can come, can share, and all that. I'm looking at a place where, probably using your mtandao, you can bring in young people for forums where they can just ask questions, ask for guidance, because that is sometimes lacking. And in
Wow.
the making of that, they end up in a wild search for solutions. And in that process, that is where they go wrong.
Wow, Caleb, I won't add anything other than thanking you so very much. First of all, coming with this idea, and I've learned a lot myself. And it's good to know that there's help out there. No star. And I like the way you have said about us listening to young people. And the challenge I'm going to take from here is perhaps we should invite more young people here. To kind of talk about the issues. What they want to see. And if you don't mind, I will also again ask you to come back again. I mean, as I said, these are things that they're not as simple as they sound, and we need to create awareness. We need to dive into them and look at the causes of this thing. Otherwise, we're going to lose lots of young people who are the future of the country. Listen, for people that have been asked, this has been Mtandao Varsity School of Soft Skills. Today I was talking to Caleb, who has taken us through some of the challenges that young people go through when they're trying to make it to the other side. My name is Kevin Nyango, and I'm going to say goodbye and God bless. Thanks, Caleb.
Thank you very much.